What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and back with the first of my Chaos Return format videos. If you don't know, Chaos Return format is the format right after Reaper, taking place in August 2006 at the SJC Indianapolis of that year. So basically 1 year after GOAT format, because that's based around the previous year's SJC Indy. But it is the April 2006 ban list and a card pool going up to Enemy of Justice, which introduces a variety of very interesting cards. Some of the most interesting among them are Dimensional Fissure and Banisher of the Radiance, cards that basically banish everything that's sent to graveyard. So everything that would be sent to graveyard is banished instead. Now, that's only really Banisher. Dimensional Fissure only applies to monsters, but generally that's all you need. Magician of Faith is at 2, so, occasionally you want to banish the spells instead. So that might make Macrocosmos better in certain situations. But, since we're potentially using DD Survivor here, you kind of want to have this up on your turn or just be able to activate it at a certain point. So I do like playing the Dimensional Fissures here as opposed to Macrocosmos. Also, Dimensional Fissures don't lose to something like Royal Decree or Jinzo, so I like that as well. Now, this list in front of you here was actually the topping list, the winning list of the previous tournament that was held in this format. This list was built by Alfia2, who was a GOAT of retro Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's a very, very good list. I think it's very, very cool. Just going through the card by card, triple Banish of the Radiance and triple Dimensional Fissure to provide as many sort of banishing floodgates as possible here. You could also play Macrocosmos as well, but it seems like, 9 might be a little bit too much, and Banisher is a body, so even if you draw it while you do have a Dimensional Fissure up, you at least have something to attack in with, so that's pretty good there. There is a Breaker of the Magical Warrior as well to clear your opponent's back row, double Sidra to bring out an aggressive monster that can beat over a lot of other things in the format. DD Assailant is here as well. This can be a great beater or just be another way to remove from play an opponent's monster. And triple DD Survivor here. This is one of the key features of the deck. As long as you have a Dim Fizz up or a Banisher up, if this thing is destroyed or sent to the graveyard, or would be sent to the graveyard, that is, it's banished instead, and then you can just bring it back at the end of the turn. Now, there are some conditions to this. If it's sent while face down, then it won't trigger its effect. In addition, if, it's sent multiple times per turn, so for instance, if it comes back in the end phase and your opponent uses another way to destroy it or get it off the field, then it will just remain banished there because it only applies once per turn. But it is still a very, very good card, and if you have multiple of this as well, it can just provide a lot of aggressive pressure that you can use to beat down whatever your opponent has. Moving on, we've got DD Warley as well to act as removal and another thing to banish. Don's Luke to rip cards out of the hand. Exiled Force here to pop your opponent's monsters. Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke here to deal with face-up defense pitcher monsters, something like Gravekeeper Spy, for instance, but also just to be a big beater here. And a Zumbire to the Dark to beat over whatever your opponent might have. We also got a Comfy, for some reason still legal in this format, but this is a very, very good hand rip, so you want to have it in the deck. Triple Dim Fizz, as I mentioned before. An enemy controller here. This can deal with certain threats, like Spirit Reaper, for instance, but it can also be used in conjunction with DD Survivor. If you tribute DD Survivor while Dimensional Fissure's up, you get to take the opponent's monster basically for free, because then DD Survivor will come back at the end of the turn, so that's pretty good as well. There's a Graceful Charity here. For some reason, this card came off the list for this format. I don't know why, but it is here, so we are playing it. Heavy Storm and MST. Heavy Storm's a little bit awkward if you've got these Dimensional Fissures up, but I do think it is still worth having here to wipe away your opponent's back row. Also, there will occasionally be times where you draw into a second Dimensional Fissure, and because you have Dimensional Fissure up, your opponent sets a bunch because they're like, well, they're not going to heavy their own Dim Fizz, right? And if you wind up in a situation like that, you can definitely heavy, wipe away their back row, and be in a really good spot. Got an MST as well to deal with our opponent's back row. We got double Nobleman's Crossroad to banish their sets. We are playing an aggressive deck, so it makes sense to be playing this, as our opponent will likely be setting cards over the course of the game, even if it's not like the first couple turns. We've got double Rhoda here to search out pretty much anything we'd want from our deck. We got a Smash of Ground to take care of our opponent's monsters, a Snatch Seal to take control of our opponent's monsters, and for the traps, we got double Bottomless to deal with things that could potentially beat over our beaters. We got double Dust Tornado to deal with back row. We've got a Mirror Force here to wipe away our opponent's aggressive pressure. We've got triple Solemn Judgment here to just stop things from happening when we're in a very, very low sort of resource situation, because oftentimes playing this deck, you get down to, a very simplified game state, so having Judgment in those cases is really good. You can also protect things like your Dim Fizz, so that's very nice as well. We've got a TT here to wipe away the entire board, and double Dust Shoot to send things back from our opponent's hand. For the side deck, there's a bunch of different cards in the side deck. We've got double Mobius here from a back row focused decks. We've got double Waboku from our OTK focused deck. We've got an Ashura Priest here for decks that are recruiter based. We've got a Mystic Swordsman level 2 here for decks that, sort of play around with flips. And there are some of those in the format now. You've got triple Grave Spy to just, bring out more bodies from deck. This can also be good if you side into the Mobiuses to give you tribute fodder for those. And it can also just be good against aggressive decks as well. Spirit Reaper, this can get in for a hand rip or just be a wall against aggressive decks. We've got a Book of Moon here to set down our opponent's stuff. We got a Brain Con to take our opponent's stuff. We got an Econ again, just another Econ. A very, very good card in this deck. Another Smashing in case we need it. A Sword if we want to slow down the game more. For the extra deck, there's not too much here that we really need to worry about because we don't really have any tools to actually go into this thing. But, you could probably be fine with just doing the typical sort of toolbox extra deck that you'd see in a Reaper format deck. And occasionally there will be times when you take control of your opponent's Stein with Snatch or something. You need to go into something. So that can come up. So it's good to have a full fusion deck here, but also keep in mind that we are playing with an unlimited fusion deck because that's how it was played at the time. So you can just proxy in whatever you need if there is a card missing here that you'd want to go into. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. Let's dive into some games and see how this deck actually plays. Here we got a game against Dumptruck here. If you can get on the channel, always a pleasure to have them on. We're diving into the games and we're going to win that rock, paper, scissors. So we will be going first here. So that's pretty nice. And what will we draw? We're going to draw Dimfizz, Mirror Force, Dawn's Luke, Exiled Force, Sasuke, and Snatch. That's a pretty good start. What I want to do here, I think, is just set the Dawn, set the Breaker, or not the Breaker, the Mirror Force. This board actually loses Breaker, which is why Breaker's on my mind, because if they do a Breaker, they bring that out, pop our back or attack over Dawn. That's really bad for us. But in that case, then we can just bring out Sasuke attack over the Breaker. So it's not terrible, and they're going to break the background no matter what we do. So it's probably better that they use it on a Mirror Force as opposed to this Dimfizz, but either way, if they don't do that, I feel like we're in a really good spot because we've got Dawn to potentially get in for a hand rip next turn. So I feel really good about that. We don't need to commit Dimfizz yet because there's no real reason to right now. We can use that next turn. Potentially our opponent will commit something like a Sangan or something to board, which they figure is relatively safe, but it's actually not safe to do Dimfizz. So I feel like this is ultimately fine. They're just going to set 3, pass back to us. And I feel really good about this. We're going to activate the Dimfizz now, just in case that is saying in, and then go for this Exiled Force here. They're going to think about exactly what to do here, and they're going to chain an MST to the Dimensional Fissure, which will then cause the Magician of Faith here to go to grave as opposed to being banished. This tells us that they're likely on a deck playing Chaos stuff, because otherwise you wouldn't really care as much about, the Magician of Faith going to grave or not, right? But they flip up a TT on the Dawn as well there, so that will destroy that. And then we'll just pass back to them. Since we don't really have much else to do, we could potentially set Dust Tornado, but I don't really think there's much reason to do that because it just plays into a Heavy Storm. So I'm just going to keep it like this. They set 2, pass back to us. We draw a Breaker, so we can just deal with that back row there. Summon out the Breaker. We'll pop the back row, and it's a Decree. Okay, Decree is very interesting here. Because they did set Decree, I'm now more inclined to set something like Dust Tornado. Because what I'm thinking is, firstly, they pop the Breaker, so we really want our Sasuke to stick next turn because it's the only monster we have in hand. And secondly, I don't think that they would commit the Decree if they had Heavy in hand. They'd probably want to use the Heavy first before committing the Decree. So I feel like we can feel relatively safe about setting the Dust Tornado because I don't think that they have a Decree in hand already. We're going to set that, and they're going to activate Heavy Storm though. So I don't know if they were holding it here. I'm not sure if they drew it for turn, but either way, I do defend the move we made. And it looks like they don't have any more back row, so our Sasuke will survive anyways, so that's pretty nice. We bring out the Sasuke attack for 18. That's going to go through. And then we're just going to set the Dimfizz, pass back to them. This may seem really weird because, it's a very powerful card. And so why don't we just activate it? And the reason I don't want to activate it is I feel like there's not much they can really do here that would necessarily need us to have Dimfizz on field. The worst case scenario is if they've got a Chaos monster, they do a Chaos thing anyways because they got a Light and Dark and Grave, so we can't really control that. But I can't really think of a situation where they'd super benefit from a card going to grave exactly. I think the one thing would be if they activate Last Will and then bring out Exiled Force and then they go into Stein. But I don't think they can kill us with Stein to get Snatch Shield for the crackback. So I feel like we're still in a good spot even if a card goes to grave. So I feel like Dimfizz is actually more valuable at this point in the game as a bluff as opposed to being activated here. But, there's definitely arguments either way to that. So I could definitely see people disagreeing with my move there. But I think it's fine. I'm just going to attack with the Sasuke. That'll go to grave there, and we'll just pass back to them. And again, we're not activating the Dimfizz because, again, I don't really think there's much reason to do that right now. Our opponent's going to set 1 pass back to us. We can just use the knock on that, so we'll knock that away. It's an Apprentice Magician, so I feel pretty good about getting that out of the picture. And our opponent's going to just pass back to us. We draw into another knock. Unfortunately, no monsters right now to press our case, but we got a lot of ways to deal with our opponent's threats, and we're at 8,000, so I feel like we're doing pretty good here. They're going to go for Breaker, pop our Dimfizz, so Didn't really matter there either way, but we did get them to use a counter at least, so we're taking 300 less damage, so that's something. We draw into a Rota, which is really nice. We're going to go for that Rota, and we're going to grab a DD Assailant here. Just run that out, attack over the Breaker. We could have gone for Survivor here as well, but I didn't want to bring out Survivor in a case where, you know, we don't have Dim Fizz or Banisher up, so I'd rather just go for the Assailants instead. We attack in for 100, and we're going to set this Snatch Steal pass back to them. They are going to bring out a Sidra here, and that's ultimately going to be okay. They bring out a Zaborg. That's kind of rough. They pop our DD Assailant here. But I feel like we're ultimately okay. Part of the reason why we set the Snatch Steal here is because they've used up Breaker, they've used up MST, they've used up Heavy. So the only thing that can really, you know, snipe this is like a Dust Tornado, or if they go for Magician of Faith into one of the spells that they've used up, but we've got Knock for that anyways. So I feel like the Snatch Steal is safe on board here, and I feel like next turn we can just use it, take control of the Zaborg, and just get attacking in for 2,400 each turn. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to attack in for 2,400 here. And again, I, set the Dim Fizz as a bluff because I don't think it's valuable right now to activate it. There are some weird cases where it would come up, like potentially if they, have a way to remove the Zaborg and then they activate Premat to bring back Zaborg. But that's a difference of 300 life points there because they've got a Sidra engrave either way. So it doesn't really matter that much. I mean, that can come up, the 300 life points, but I think it's more valuable just leaving it as a bluff, providing some uncertainty there. And they don't really have a good way to remove it anyways. They're going to set a card here, which is perfect because we get the knock. So we're going to go for the knock there. Attack in for 24 yet again. And drop them down to 2,300. Set this Econ. Now that we've got another bluff, we can feel fine activating the Dim Fizz. Just having it on field here. Again, I don't really even think that we necessarily needed it up right now. But since we do have this other bluff, I think we're fine doing this. And also by activating this, we potentially bluff that this is not a live card, which it actually is a live card. So, it's sort of the mind games at this point that we're playing. We're going to attack into that DD Warrior Lady. They're going to banish that and banish this Zaborg away there. And we're just going to set this Dust Shoot, pass back to them. And they're just going to pass back to us. That's really good for us because this Dust Shoot will be live, hopefully, unless they, blind... actually, they're out of MST, so there isn't really a quick play spell that they can really use here in their draw phase. So standby, we're just going to Dust Shoot, get a peek at their hands. They've got a Reaper, a Sidra, a Meta, and a Creature Swap. I think of those, we care the most about Reaper, because while we can get rid of Reaper with Econ, I feel like we just want to send it back to deck, because we've got Bottomless to deal with Sidra. So, and also if they just set the Reaper, that's annoying for us, because then that blocks an attack, we have to use Smashing on it, and so that's kind of weird. So, yeah, I'm just going to send back the Reaper there, and we had some big lagging issues there. DB, was just having a tough time at this point, so they're just going to set one. We know that's either Creature Swap or Metamorphosis, so we feel fine with that. We're going to bring out this Banish for the Radiance attack in for 16, and then we're just going to pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Reaper. Okay, it looks like the shuffle didn't go through because of the lag issues. So they're going to draw again. And they're going to bring out this Sidra. We're just going to bottomless that. There is some potential arguments to not bottomlessing it here, because we do have Econ switch to defense, and then we can Smashing. But I just feel like bottomless is best to be used now while we can, right? So we bottomless it. They set one, pass back to us. We draw a Comfy here, and we're just going to attack into that. It is a Reaper. Okay, that is perfectly fine by us. We're just going to set this Comfy, pass back to them. The reason for this is we've got Econ to pop the Reaper at any point, so I feel like it's fine just leaving it as is. They are just going to set another, pass back to us. We draw a Solemn Judgment here. We're just going to try and get aggressive, smashing around the Reaper. They go for Book on the Reaper, and we will chain the Econ here, and this will indeed work like this. So I was a bit confused at the time, because I was like, wait, does it actually work that way? But it will work, where if we chain Econ as Chain Link 3, we will be able to change the Spirit Reaper to attack, and then it will pop itself with its own effect before the Book of Moon flips it down. So that will indeed work out for us. So we traded 2 for 2 here. And, then we get the Banisher to attack in. So we just had to check the ruling there. But the ruling did indeed work that way. And then DB had some issues as well. So the game was kind of scuffed, admittedly. But yeah, that Reaper will indeed get banished there because of the Dim Fizz. We'll attack in for 16. We activate Comfy just to get that last card out of hand, because we've got this one Solemn here. I mean, we should be fine. If they, the one thing that doesn't let us win here is if they, set a monster, then go for Creature Swap. Or just set a monster and, pass. Then we can't really do Solemn on that. But I feel like we're in a really good spot overall with the Solemn there. Because we can just Solemn whatever they draw, if they do summon it, or if they do activate something. Because we know that the last set is Creature Swap. And they're going to activate Graceful Charity. We're just going to Solemn that. And that'll just be the end of the game. So very, very good stuff for game 1 there. And I mean, I think it shows how powerful this deck can be. Just with that, controlling nature of the Dim Fizz and the Solemns and just the 1-for-1 removal that it's got. So very, very cool stuff here. We're going into game 2, and this game is very, very scuffed for reasons that you'll see in a second. But, the scuffage on this game is largely just because, I mean, we both have a responsibility to check this sort of thing. I go for smashing here. I should have gone for Dim Fizz first and then smashing just to banish the Reaper, but I don't do that. So that's part of the scuffage, is my misplay there. They go for Decree here. I go for the Solemn Judgment to stop the Decree. They go for MST on the other back row to TT, and then they bring out a Sidra here. They attack into the Banisher, and that should get banished, but I send it to Grave. So again, the game is getting scuffed here. I draw into DD Survivor, which is really good. I bring that out, and I attack into the Magician of Faith here, and they get back MST. The Magician of Faith should be banished, but it is not. Again, the scuffage, and you'll see why that scuffing actually matters here for this turn, because my opponent will banish the Reaper and the Magician of Faith from Grave to bring out Sork. If it was not in Grave, if it was banished like it should have been off Dim Fizz, then the Sork would not have been able to come down. I think they still would have been in a good spot because they got Tsukiyomi. So they just flipped down the Survivor attack over it with Suk and then attack directly for 21. So dropping us down to 1,400 while they're at 8,000 and the Suk is back in hand. So I feel like, they're still in a very good spot. We do get back DD Survivor though at that point. So, I don't necessarily know who would have won that one, but I think it would have most likely been them. So either way, I think we were probably going to lose this one. But, again, this game was very scuffed, and it's a responsibility of both players, not just my opponent, to, realize that cards need to be banished off the Dim Fizz. As the player playing Dim Fizz, I should have known that. So that was my mistake. But again, I think my opponent would have won that game anyways. So it's just a little bit scuffed there. But that's how it is sometimes. That's when you play on a manual simulator, that's one of the risks that you take. But anyways, we're going to go into this game. And I did bring in the Mobiuses because I figured that Decree is a problem. I sided out, I think, one Bottomless. And I sided out, I think I sided out Sasuke. Yeah, Grandmaster Sasuke. Because while it is a beater, it doesn't really do much against, like, Apprentice Magicians. So I feel like Sasuke isn't necessarily necessary here. But anyways, this is a really good hand. I set the Dawn's Luke, set the Dust Shoot, set the Judgment, pass back to my opponent. And then standby phase, I go for the the Dust Shoot, send something back. And this is a bit of a tricky choice because Breaker can pop my Judgment, which is very annoying. So I don't necessarily want them to do that. But Sidra, I think that probably what I should do here. Oh man, it's tough. I think, so what I do here is I send back Sidra because I'm thinking like, okay, Breaker pops the Solemn, but I can also use Solemn to get rid of the Breaker just to get it in Grave. I could do that on the Sidra as well. And either way, I think I do want to use Solemn on their summon here if they summon, because then I force out the Mirror Force next turn with Zalug, or I summon out Mobius, pop the Mirror Force that way if they leave me Mobius, because they're going to have Comfy no matter what. So that's also something to consider. So at this point, I'm thinking about like Solemn their Judgment no matter what. And since they've got 3 Darks in hand and I don't have any way to banish their stuff, like with Dim Fizz or something like that, I figure it's probably better to send back the Sidra into deck as opposed to sending back the Breaker. So it's a bit of a tough thing. I have to sort of like think out like my multiple plays there. And of course, we could get punished for this because they could just set Apprentice Magician pass, which is obviously not the best for us. But I do think this is ultimately the correct play. I figure that they're probably going to take the Knock here because Knock will deal with Apprentice Magician, which is very annoying. And I do just go for the Solemn here on the Breaker, as I mentioned, because, again, I think I had to Solemn whatever they summon there, just so I can bring out Mobius next turn, pop the Mirror Force, and then get in for some damage. So they're going to go for Comfy here, take the Knock. If they'd taken the Mobius, that would have been unfortunate, but we would have just traded the Dawn's Luge with the Mirror Force, and then we would have probably set Warrior Lady on the following turn. Or, I mean, it depends on what we draw, but that's sort of like my thinking of this. But yeah, Knock, I think, was definitely the right choice. We draw DD Survivor, which is pretty good. We're going to bring out that Mobius. We could have also just flipped up the Zalug, attacked in, and then traded for the Mirror Force that way, and then like set Warrior Lady or summon DD Survivor in main 2. But I feel like this is probably better because, it trades with the Mirror Force, but it also then gets in damage on top of that. So that's what I want to do. I attack in for 24 here, and then I pass back to them. So they will set 1, pass back to us, and I figure that's probably Apprentice Magician. Now, I checked to see if Apprentice Magician will still trigger if it's banished off of Warrior Lady, and it will indeed. So, I can't just stop it with Warrior Lady there, unfortunately. But, I do just bring it back, or not bring it back, but I do bring out the Warrior Lady after checking that, and then attack in. And it's Reaper. So our opponent was trying to sort of like switch things up on us, but it actually did not work because, you know, we're able to banish that Reaper just fine, get in for 2,400 more, and we're feeling very good about this game. We set a TT, pass back to them, and they will set one pass back to us. We draw into a Dim Fizz, which is pretty nice as well. We can bring out this DD Survivor attack into their set. Now, of course, the Apprentice Magician will still trigger off the Dim Fizz. It will be banished here, so get it out of there. We're not going to make the same mistakes we made in game 2. And our opponent will bring out an Old Vindictive here. Now, Apprentice Magician is semi-limited, so they can't go for, like another Apprentice Magician there, which is why they did that. But that will pop our Mobius here, banish that, and then we'll pass back to them. Now, this is great because Survivor is just going to keep surviving as long as this Dim Fizz remains on field. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. They will set 2, pass back to us. We draw into Mystic Trojan level 2, so that's great. That will stop Apprentice Magician. We're going to attack into the set. They've got a book for that, so that's a little bit unfortunate. And then we got to think about it, whether we want to actually attack into the Apprentice Magician here, allow them to get out that Moth. And I do have to read that it is Apprentice Magician because, again, you know, they've had 2 Apprentice Magicians, so it makes sense for them to commit that as soon as possible to get out the other sort of spellcaster from the deck. But we're just going to leave it at that. Choose not to attack in, and we get a little bit punished for that because they're able to flip up this Magician of Faith, and they're able to add back that book there. So they will be able to add that book to hand, and now they're able to go for meta here on Thousand Eyes, and they're going to try and prio target the Survivor. We go for TT here. Now, I think my opponent made a little bit of a misplay here. I think what they should have done here, they should have chained book to the TT here and target the Survivor, because it only works while it's face up on field. So if they had booked it down, then it would not have actually come back. And we would have been in a little bit of a tough spot. You know, we're still in an okay spot because we got plenty of draws that can be very nice here. But our opponent would have been able to set down the Apprentice Magician as sort of a wall that we have a difficult time getting into. And we would have been basically in top deck mode. So I think that probably would have been the better choice. But our opponent just lets that go and sets 1, which is probably the book. And the Survivor comes back here. And I guess this makes sense because it's a bit more of a defensive option. But I do think that it probably would have been better to just you know, book down the Survivor here. But we would have been able to get in. Well, actually, if they had set the Apprentice Magician, then we would have been able. Yeah, so we would have been walled off a bit there, but I think this is still ultimately fine. We draw into Mirror Force here. We set the Mirror Force. We attack in to their set monster there. It is a Spirit Reaper. And they might actually not have more targets left in deck for the Apprentice Magician. Although Magician of Faith is at 2. They might have sided out, though, because, you know, we are on a banished deck, so it might be a little bit worse for them. So that's something to consider as well. We're not going to commit the Dim Fizz here because they've not used up Heavy Storm, and I don't want to just get heavied for my life savings. So we're just going to keep passing back and forth. There's no Dark Hole or anything in this format, so I could have potentially committed the Radiance as well. But I don't really think we need to because TT has not been used up on their part, so I don't really want to play into that. We draw Solemn, which is pretty good here because we're going to just set the Solemn, so now they can't really heavy us here. So we're just going to keep passing back until we finally draw Reinforced in the Army. This should be the end of the game because we just add an Exiled Force to hand. Exiled Force, get rid of that Spirit Reaper, and then attack in. We've got Solemn in case they've got anything here that stops that, but it looks like they do not. It's just a Swords of Light that, you know, they could have potentially activated it, but it's not really worth it with a Reaper up in defense mode. So I do get why they held that there. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this game. I think either way, even if they had done the book play, I think we would have probably been in a winning spot overall based on our following draws there. Of course, you know, based on what they drew, maybe things would have changed. I guess they drew Zaborg later on, but I don't know when they drew that. But I think either way here, we would have probably won this one in the end because we had enough things to deal with whatever they were bringing out. But, I mean, that's going to do it for this game of the match, of the video, that is. And I think that this deck is actually really good based on this game. Like, I think it's a very, very aggressive deck when it needs to be, but also Dim Fizz and Banisher can be really annoying for certain decks to face. So let's dive into another game that I got with the deck and show how that can manifest against different strategies as well. Okay, we got a game against Zawarudo Dark Arm God, a freaking guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We're diving into the game, and since last game, we just hard through paper and won the game there. We want to mix it up. We want to still win with paper, but I have the read that my opponent's going to throw scissors first, just to try and play around us playing paper last time. So I throw scissors of my own to tie that. And then I figure since they saw us playing scissors, they're going to play rock. And then I can play paper and win that way. So I do indeed win the rock, paper, scissors here. Just want to let you in a bit on the mind games there. So I did enjoy that sort of thing as well. And I mean, we're going first. And this is quite a hand for going first. This is incredibly good. We're just going to set the DD Assailant, set 3, pass back to our opponent. We got double Dutch Shoot here. So we can go for Dutch Shoot. Get a peek at their hand. See that they've got Homunculus, Herald, Sangan, Monster Gate there, and Card Destruction, and another Monster Gate. So that's a bit interesting for us. I think what we want to do here is I think we want to double dust shoot for the Sangan and the Herald. There is always the potential that they just hard dust shoot after, not hard dust shoot, but hard card destruction after we dust shoot once and then draw 4 for another dust shoot. But I do think that it's more likely that they set a monster gate before firing the card destruction, which then shuts off our other dust shoot. So what I want to do here is I want to send back the Sangan, and then I'll send back the Herald. So that way this forces them to, you know, do something here to get back other stuff. So because otherwise, you know, they can just set Herald, go for Monster Gate, and do things with that. And I don't really want them to do that. So they're going to go for card destruction here. Now, there was some lagging issues here. So, you know, it was a bit tricky there. It wasn't coming through on my end. So there's a bit of confusion about what happened here. But they do go for card D. We could potentially solemn that card D because, you know, we're just leaving them with a useless hand here. But I figured they're drawing just 2 cards. So if they draw into a monster, then we just solemn the monster gate there that they've got. And then they're down to 1 card. And we're up 2, 3 cards here. So I feel like we're doing pretty good no matter what there. So they go for Crane. They go for the monster gate here. I solemn the monster gate. And I figure that should be pretty good there. They're going to go for Reasoning. Reasoning is a bit tricky. We go for 8 because we don't want them to get a Demock to get back another spell here. And Demock would just be annoying for us in general, I think. But they hit Stein. That is, yeah, that's pretty bad for us here. They can go for 5k. And if they go for Dark Balter, we're in a really bad spot because Dark Balter can negate the effect of Assailant. Then they can get in for 7. We can get in for 8 after that. But, you know, we're still in a bad spot because we don't really have a good way to clear that Balter. But they're just going to bring out a Cyber End Dragon here, attack into our set. And luckily for us, that will be banished. They do drop us down to 900, which is a bit of a scary spot to be in. But I do think this is ultimately pretty good for us, especially when we draw into Solemn to stop whatever else they might have there. So we're going to attack in to the Cyber Stein there. Not use the effect. We could have potentially used the effect because it does put a light and dark in graveyard. We got Solemn if they go for that. I value the monster on field over their potential chaos play here. They're just going to pass back to us. We draw into Dawn's Luke, so that's just going to be the end of the game. We summon that out, attack in with Dawn first, so that way we get more information. They let this go through, and they will need to let it go through, so they drew into another Held of Green Light, and that'll just be the end of the game. I think for siding, I don't actually make any changes because I do think that our deck is really good against their deck because they wind up banishing a bunch of cards potentially, which makes things like Demock a lot worse. Also, you can't activate Heralds under Dimfuse, I'm pretty sure, because it has to send to the graveyard for cost, and Dimfuse doesn't allow that to happen. So they're just going to set 1 and activate the effect of Diamond Dude. So it seems like we got a bit of Diamond Dude turbo here. That's pretty cool. So they whiff on that one, but ultimately that's pretty fine. Diamond Dude's just an annoying monster to deal with in general. We go for a Dimfuse here, then summon out this DD Survivor, try and attack in, and that will indeed go through. So we do hit over that Diamond Dude. Now we set the Bottomless, pass back to our opponent here. They're just going to pass back to us. I feel very good about that. We draw into Reaper here, which we could potentially bring out to try and get a hand rip. But what I want to do instead is I want to go for Rhoda. They can't actually go for the Herald here because, again, you know, Dimfuse prevents that from going through. So, you know, we do get to just Rhoda here and search out another Survivor. So now we can bring out that Survivor, get in for 3,600. I want to do this because this drops them down below the Stein range. We do know that they're playing Stein. And also, this just gives us 2 threats that keep coming back as opposed to just 1. So I feel very good about this line of play. We pass back to them. They go for a Reasoning here. And we think about exactly what to do. I choose 4 because I figure 4 is most common. If they do hit 8, we do have Bottomless for that to get rid of the Demock if they want to go for that. But I think maybe I should call it 8 because, you know, we do see Heavy coming here and stuff like that. And if they do get back a Heavy, that's going to be really annoying for us off the Demock. So I think maybe I should have called 8 just for the potential that they milled a powerful spell and hit it. But I do call 4 just because I don't want them to get the draws off something like Crane, for instance. But yeah, they keep milling until they get a monster that can be normal summoned or set. And Stork cannot be, so you keep going past that. They do hit a Mobius here, which is a bit annoying for us. We are able to Bottomless that, so we managed to prevent them from actually hitting the field. And then they go for Return here, which is a bit awkward for us, because we've sort of fueled their Banish Zone there. I'm not sure if they're playing Return in their main, or if it's just in the side, but either way, they're able to go for that, then tribute off the Diamond Dude for a Golden Homunculus here. 2,100 attack. They're able to hit over our entire board here, but the Survivors will both come back, and the Mobius will be banished at the end of this turn. So I think we do just win the game here. Yeah, no back row there, so we are able to just win the game. Could these Survivors both come back, we can reinforce the army for an Exiled Force, and then pop the Homunculus. So that should do it there. So Yeah, very good game for us. But again, I think that our deck here was sort of tailor suited to beat this sort of deck, although it could have potentially been bad for us if they were playing returns. But either way, we are able to win this game on the strength of just DD Survivor plus Dimensional Fissure. Just very, very strong combo there. And very, very good stuff here. So we will indeed just win the game there. And that will be the end of the game. So this was only the second match that I got. I got one more match here just to sort of show off this deck against another deck. And so let's dive into that one now and see how it goes. Okay, we got our last game here against PJ Darkness here, a freaking guest on the channel. And going into the rock, paper, scissors, I'm thinking about what to do. I'm thinking, okay, they might have seen the previous one where we threw scissors. So we got to throw rock to throw them off. And then I think I have the read. They're just going to throw rock again. So then we can win with paper. So I'm trying to angle for winning with paper every single one of these games, but starting with a different rock, paper, scissors thing. So we do indeed go for rock there. They throw a rock. I go for paper because I'm like, they're just going to do rock again. I know it. And we do indeed manage to win the rock, paper, scissors. So, you know, paper gang rise up, but sometimes you got to go outside the paper to actually get that paper win. So lessons for us all. Anyways, we're just going to open a pretty good opener here. We're just going to set the warrior lead, set the bottomless, pass back to them. I feel like this is a pretty good opener here. It gets punished if they summon out like the Mystic Sword in level 2, but then if they do that, we just special summon Sidra, bring up Sasuke, and then go for big damage there. They go for Comfy here, so they're able to rip something out of her hand. They're able to rip the knock there. It was a bit unfortunate for us. They go for Sidra here. We could potentially let that through and have it trade with our warrior lady. But I have the read that they're going to follow this up with a set monster, not any other aggressive monster here, because they did take our knock. So I'm going to bottomless this. So I go for the bottomless there. They do indeed set a monster, and then they pass back to us. So we're going to draw into a Dust Tornado here, which is pretty good. We're going to float the Warrior Lady, set the Dust Tornado just in case it's like Morphing Jar or something. This is actually pretty nice because if it is Morphing Jar and they pitch an MST and a Cyber Dragon, then they don't know what our set is. So, you know, while MST and Dust Tornado are relatively equivalent, this way preserves more information on our part. So they're going to pop the Sasuke with what is a Night Assailant here. We choose not to banish with the Warrior Lady there because I don't really think it's necessary. They could be on Chaos stuff. But they don't have any lights engraved, so we can save the Warrior Lady for a light. But they're going to think about exactly what to do here. Bring in a Stein. Okay, they're getting aggressive here. They're able to attack in with this Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which will clear the Warrior Lady and deal us 3,000. So now we're cut off from Stein range if we did want to do that. But then they're able to attack in for 700 more. And it's a bit awkward for them because they know about the Sidra in hand. And they don't have any back row. Okay, so we're feeling very good about this because we got Rhoda as well. So we can just Rhoda something out and add a Don's Luke to hand and then get in for lethal damage here. So yeah, they're just going to admit defeat there. And we're going to go on to game 2. So diving in to game 2 here. We are indeed going second. I don't really think that we changed much about our deck because we didn't really get to see enough of their deck to tell. We did see that they were on the Night Assailants though, so that's kind of interesting. Our opponent's going to just set one, pass back to us. This could mean that they've just got like Sidra in hand or something like that. But either way, we're going to try and rip a card out of their hand with this Don's Luke. We're going to activate Dimfist so it gets banished if it gets discarded. But they go for Saku there. I could have potentially gone for the Survivor to play around that a little bit. But I did value the hand rip there. So I wanted to get that out of the hand. And if they did have a way to trade with the Don, like with the Saku, I have the read that they've got Sidra because they didn't commit anything to board here first turn. So they still can't bring out the Sidra there. So that's why I like that play. We're going to set this Solemn, pass back to them. We don't necessarily want to use the Solemn right away if they do have something here. But, you know, they just got swords, so we're just going to let that go through. That's perfectly fine by us. One on sword. We're just going to set this Warrior Lady, pass back to them. If they do have Sidra here, Warrior Lady will banish the Sidra, so that's pretty nice. They just choose to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Cyber Dragon of our own here. And just because that set could be something scary, we're going to grab this Exiled Force with the Rhoda there. We're going to bring out the Exiled Force and banish that. Pop what turns out to be a Night Assailant, so we're perfectly fine with that. And they're going to bring out a Sidra. Yep, we're fine with that because it will get banished by the Warrior Lady. That will indeed go through. They're going to pass back to us. We draw a Breaker here. Now, we could commit the Breaker and just pop that Swords. But since the last turn on Swords, I don't really think it's necessary to go for the Breaker here. So we just summon out the Survivor, pass back to them. And Survivor just will stick around here if they manage to clear it because we got this Dim Fuse up. So they are going to set one, pass back to us, and that's perfect. We got this Breaker in hand to pop that back row there. And we will indeed do that. Popping the back row, hitting a Mirror Force, so I feel very good about saving the Breaker there. We attack in for 3,400, pass back to them. They're out of Stein range, so they can't use that anymore. And they're going to think about exactly what to do here. They're going to set one, set another, pass back to us. Okay, that's a bit of an interesting play. We drew Comfy here. I think what I should have done here is realizing that they weren't setting up to this point, and then they set 2 here. I think what I should have done is I should have had the read that that set was Morphing Jar and then set my Comfy in Smashing Ground. But I don't. I just play into it, and we get punished by that. So we will indeed banish the Cider there, pitch the Comfy and the Smashing. Comfy would have been really good here after a Morphing Jar hit, but we tried to do Dust Shoot, so we're just that good. You know, Dust Shoot, double Dust Shoot will just wrap things up anyways too. So yeah, that should be the end of the game here. So yeah, we're just going to set the Woboku, set double Dust Shoot, pass back to them, and we just fire Dust Shoot here, and they just admit defeat. I mean, what do they have? Yeah, I mean, this hand isn't bad. They could set, like, I mean, okay, so what are we Dust Shooting here? We're probably Dust Shooting, like, the Reaper and maybe the Faith. I think Reaper Faith seems good. Yeah, I think we're probably Dust Shooting the Reaper and the Faith. Although it's a little bit awkward because if they bring up Breaker, they can pop Dim Fizz, but we can also Solemn the Breaker if we want to. We can also just let the Dim Fizz go because we've got this Banisher up on field. So, and also we got Woboku in case they start crashing the Breaker into the Banisher there. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot here overall. I think we probably are winning this game, but I'm not necessarily sure they should have admitted defeat here because there are potential ways for them to come back from this, but those ways are few and far between for sure. So I do respect just saying like, nah, I'm not going to play this one out because I'm just losing this one no matter what. But that's going to do it for the game. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video and the games that we saw here, because I do think that this was a good showing for the sort of anti-meta warrior macro deck, you know, trying to play a deck that is just utilizing these survivors to keep coming back, be an annoying monster that you have to deal with, and just sort of stymieing the game plan of a lot of other decks, you know, like Treeborn Frog gets banished off Dim Fizz, you know, Chaos decks, they lose their materials in Grave as well. So I do really like this deck a lot. Of course, there are other ways to build this sort of thing. You can go for a more Monarch heavy direction, just using these Deed survivors, kind of like a Treeborn Frog, and just going for Monarchs there, which has seen play in the past. You can go for a Warrior deck, not playing these survivors or the Dim Fizzes or stuff, and just going for just a pure good Warrior build. You know, that's something that you can do as well. But I do think that this deck is very good, and I do think that if you're starting out in Chaos Return format, it is a good deck to start with. I always recommend starting out, if you're new to a format, just looking at the topping lists of the previous events and just picking one that seems good and playing that, and sort of using that to sort of dip your toes in the water of this format. And so that's what I always try to do, and I really enjoy doing that with this deck in this format here. But I hope you enjoyed the video as always. If you liked what you saw here, definitely leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,500 subs by the end of the month here, and you know, with your help, we can make it there. We only have about 30 or so left to go, so with your help, we can definitely reach that goal by the end of the month. In addition, if you want to get games in Chaos Return format or any other format that I featured on the channel, head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. It's a great place to find games in this format or any other format that I've featured on the channel. In addition, if you want to support me directly, I've got a Patreon linked in the description down below. And if you join the Patreon, you get shouted in these videos. So big shoutouts to Tyler Compton, GMYFS, Rincewin, Porkchop, Coon, Brendan Donker, and Numtruck. It means a lot that you all support me this way and encourage me to make more videos like this one in the future. But I hope that you enjoyed this video as always. Until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.